TIFU by not washing under my foreskin for the first 15 years of my life. This is long so TLDR at the bottom. This happened around 6 years ago when I was in 9th grade. I grew up not knowing a single thing about my coconut or how to clean it. My parents never taught me anything about genitals and I apparently never asked. All I knew was that's where the pee came out. So one day in 9th grade biology our teacher was covering the male reproductive system that day and she got to a point where she mentioned that for uncircumcised males the foreskin is supposed to retract over the head of the zucchini. I was pretty shocked because that's certainly not how mine worked. By that time I was a daily meat eater and my foreskin could barely go back enough for me to see the entrance of the urethra. So armed with my new knowledge about how my zucchini was supposed to work, I went home and a few Google searches led me to discover that I had a severe case of phimosis. So being the pragmatic young buck that I am, I also Googled how to fix it. There were basically two options: either tell my parents and have them take me to a doctor for surgery or do stretching exercises. Not wanting to tell any of this to my parents or have someone come near my cheesecake with a scalpel, I opted for the latter option. I got some baby oil, the only lube available at the time other than my mom's bottle of expensive extra virgin olive oil, and went to work. After about 4 hours of stretching I finally started making some progress. I could see a slightly bigger area now, not just the opening of the urethra like before. Everything was going great except for one thing. From the underside of my foreskin came the most pungent, musty, cheesy, disgusting smell I've ever had the displeasure of smelling even to this day. It dawned on me that my butternut had truly not been cleaned at all in my entire life up to that point. I kept stretching over the course of a few days and I started to notice a thick, gooey greenish-brown sludge seeping from under the foreskin as I stretched. Some quick googling taught me that this was smegma, also known as cheesecake cheese. I cleaned it off whenever it seeped out during my stretching exercises, and as much as it disgusted me, everything was still going fine. That was about to change real coconut fast. This was about 10 days into my stretching and I'd gotten my foreskin about to the halfway mark. I was getting very excited to finally have a normal full-functioning coconut, so I got very impatient and I decided I'd try to force it all the way back. That day I lubed and got to work. I pulled it back as far as it would go and pulled it some more. I pulled it till I couldn't bear the pain anymore. I did this over and over again for around 3 hours until I somehow managed to pull it almost to where it was almost over the entirety of the head of my coconut. I got way too excited and despite the pain I gave it one big yank and I felt the foreskin pop over the back of the glands. It hurt like hell, but I was just so relieved that I didn't care. Opened my eyes and my heart skipped several beats. The entire lower half of the head of my butternut down to the area behind it was caked with thick brown/green butternut that was now mixing with the blood that was now seeping out of where I tore the top part of my foreskin when I yanked it over the glands. I freaked and squeezed the area to stop the bleeding, and that only made the pain worse. It eventually stopped and then I had to chip away at the zucchini caked onto my zucchini. I eventually got it all off after half an hour of scrubbing. I was still hurting, but I was finally done. I got the foreskin all the way back over the head of my zucchini. I thought that was it. I tried rolling it back over the head but it wouldn't budge, so I just left it. I completely ignored the fact that forcing the foreskin back all the way would constrict all the blood flow to the head of my zucchini. You know how a balloon looks when you fill it with water and tie it? That's how my butternut looked. I went to bed, went to school the next day in severe pain and acted like everything was fine. When I got home I was still in major pain, so I decided I'd check on it. I undressed in the shower and looked down at it. The first thing I saw were the blisters. Two huge brown pus-filled blisters, one on the right side and the other on the underside of the glands. The next thing I noticed was the fact that my coconut was now seemingly turning some shade of white. I'm a black guy. I realized that if I didn't find a way to get my foreskin back over my glands, then it was probably going to shrivel up and fall off. I lubed up once more and began forcing my foreskin back over the glands. This was made even more difficult because of the two big blisters in the way. I kept trying to force it back over and I put too much pressure on one of the blisters and it broke, causing pus to leak out all over my banana and fingers. My zucchini was on fire at this point and I was holding back tears, but I kept pushing until I felt it pop back over the glands. Judging from the liquid that seeped out afterwards and the extra jolt of pain I felt, I guess the second blister popped too. Once again I left it and coconut went to bed. Checked 3 days later and my cheesecake went back to its original color. I rolled back the foreskin again and cleaned where the blisters were, and within 3 weeks I was pretty much okay. My foreskin was still tight, and I do think constricting my glands with the opening of my foreskin for a whole day probably made me lose a tiny bit of sensation down there, but hey, at least my butternut is clean. Also, please for the love of God teach your kids about their body. Even if they aren't as stupid as I was, don't take that risk lol. TL, doctor, had severe phimosis, did stretching exercises to fix it, forced it back because I got impatient, had to clean 15 years worth of zucchini off my zucchini and ended up tearing my foreskin, couldn't get it back over the glands cause it was too tight, left it there for a day. Zucchini turned white and blistered due to the opening of the foreskin squeezing the area where the glands meets the shaft. Forced it back over and popped both blisters in the process. Most traumatic experience of my life. Edit, so I didn't expect this to blow up like this lol. Thanks for the silver, gold and platinum. While I'm happy everyone seems to have enjoyed the story, I'd like to clear up something. This post was not meant to turn people against leaving their kids uncircumcised. Circumcision removes a lot of the sensitive nerve endings in the butternut and leads to a decrease in the amount of pleasure one feels from butternut. Rather, I'd like people to take this as a warning of what can happen when you avoid teaching your children about taking care of themselves. For those of you who are suffering from a tight foreskin, my #1 recommendation is to see a doctor. Don't be stupid like me and put yourself through this hell. They have creams and other medications that can make this a much easier process. Those of you who aren't old enough to see a doctor on your own, then you have to tell your parents. Believe me, it's not as awkward that you think. Don't risk permanently harming yourself just because of a few seconds of awkwardness between you and the two people who know what every inch of your naked body looks like. This sounds like an instant Reddit classic. Butternut cheese? Check. Pus-filled boils over glands? Check. Cheesecake on fire? Check. Right, to the top we go. I don't even have a coconut and I'm traumatized by this. WTF, that went from bad to horrific. The smell alone probably killed several members of your household. TIFU by banana so hard I fainted. So this happened a couple of days ago. Had rash develop over the past few weeks and it was itching like crazy. Thought at first it was just some kind of allergy from switching body washes lately. After changing back to my old wash and my rash didn't showing any indication of subsiding, I went to visit a dermatologist. Anyways, turns out I have a skin condition called pityriasis rosea, which isn't actually serious and should go away on its own. So she prescribed me some corticosteroids for the itching and sent me on my way home. Anyone that has ever gotten an itch knows that there are few things more pleasant than scratching it. After showering, and before taking my medication, the rash was itching particularly strongly and I sat down on the toilet to dry my hair. I noticed that when the hot air from the dryer came in contact with my rash was spread all over the back. It felt like scratching my back really good. So naturally I took the hot dryer closer to my skin and voila, that banana felt close to an banana. Naturally I decided to take it to the next logical level, flopping the bishop while scratching my rash with the hot hair dryer. Yes, I know this sounds mildly retarded. What ensued next was the most transcending experience in my whole cheesecake life. I busted a nut so hard I started to see stars, my whole body started to tremble and I butternut fainted. My parents heard the thump of me falling on the floor from downstairs, and apparently called for me a few times. My mother is a real warrior, so my dad broke down the bathroom door, where they found me laying like literally covered in a quarter cup's worth of coconut, my back all red from the hot air, and the hairdryer blowing at max speed all over the place. So yeah, my mother hasn't looked me in the eye for like 2 days. FML. TL, doctor, found out hot air from hairdryer works 50 times better than scratching with nails. Decided I wanted to scratch and butternut at the same time. Came so hard I went to Narnia and back, fainted so hard on the toilet seat my dad had to tear down the bathroom door. I'm legit thinking of going living in the woods. Lol. Wow, I had no idea this would blow up like this. Thanks for the golds, silvers and platinum, kind strangers. Peace, I'm looking into becoming hairdryer sales guy now. The amount of confusion they must have had when they first saw you is infinite. There is no way his dad isn't racking his brain trying to figure out how the hell the blow dryer is involved so that he can try it himself. I have eczema and people don't believe me when I say running it under hot water during a flare-up is orgasmic. So I feel you up. In middle school I used to get it on my legs and arms in the winter, and being a dumb kid I didn't tell my parents or even use lotion, because the rash was weird and lotion was for girls. Thus over the course of the winter the rash would get worse and worse, but I soon discovered during showers that turning the water as hot as it could go and blasting it for as long as I could stand produced, without exaggeration, pure, drug-like, intoxicating levels of euphoria. Years later I heard that goats and sheep can get a skin condition which leads them to rub against fences so vigorously that they bleed to death. I understood exactly why those goats did that. Tell them you are on drugs and go to rehab. That sounds better than the truth. Honey, I think the boy was sticking his you-know-what in the hairdryer. That boy ain't right. The real fuck-up is that you'll spend the rest of your life trying to find a banana that transcendent ever again. TIFU by tipping my pizza delivery driver $1,100. So today I sold my Bitcoin I bought 2 years ago. I spent like $100 on the investment or something. I cashed it out at a Bitcoin ATM and brought it home. The first thing I did to celebrate was buy some edibles. Eat a whole brownie and am out of it. I order some pizza and take some money from my wad and put it in a pile on the table next to me. Total was like 20, so I put 23. Since I'm high AF, the pizza delivery girl knocks. I grab the wad of all the money, not the $23 stack. I give it to her and she starts crying. She keeps saying, "Are you sure you don't know how much this is going to help me?" Freaked out and high, I say okay and just rush inside. Right now, after waking up being passed out, I realize what I've done. Gave away my bill money for this month, lol. TL, doctor, I tipped my pizza delivery driver $1,100 while high on brownie edibles by accident and have no money to pay for my bills now. Thanks for all the nice comments and the Reddit gold, kind stranger. I just woke up and this post just blew up. I could never call the pizza place and ask for the money back. With how happy it made the women and the fact it was my own dumb mistake, it just wouldn't feel right in my head. I would rather be late on my bills and figure anything else out than do that. I just want to say thank you to you /Mr. Chief 117 who helped me out in an insane way. I really don't deserve how nice some people in this world are. I worked as a delivery driver for Domino's in high school, and I once had to return a tip I was given. I delivered the food, which came to like $35, and the lady who answered the door handed me $50. She said to keep the change, which surprised me. I even said, "This is a $15 tip, you sure?" "Absolutely, you deserve it," she replied. Wow, what a nice lady. I get back to the store to hear my manager on the phone trying to calm someone down. The lady's husband called in and demanded that I return the tip, because he never would have tipped that much. My manager told me I had to return it. I was zucchini pissed, and I still remember the guy's house. Hey, you still have $23, don't be upset. On the upside, you're going to have the faster pizza delivery time in the city from now on. On the downside, it is probably him that will need to deliver it. I'm just waiting on the girl's story on Reddit. I hope the pizza was good, at least. It was to starve this month for.